On the night of August 11th, 2010, at 10 p.m., at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, an Israeli citizen was preparing to board a flight back to Israel. However, fate took a turn as he faced a severe arrest by U.S. Customs and Police instead of returning home. Elias Abuelazam was born on August 29, 1976, in Ramla, a city in central Israel about 20 kilometers from the Mediterranean Sea. He originally lived in a well-off Christian Arab family. Unfortunately, his father passed away during his childhood. When he was about 7 or 8 years old, his mother remarried, and the family moved to the United States. He received a U.S. green card but did not obtain U.S. citizenship. Additionally, Abuelazam had 2 marriages. His first marriage was to Dawn Costello in Virginia in 1997, which ended in separation in 2000 and divorce in 2002. His second marriage was to Jessica Hirth on July 30, 2004, which ended in divorce in 2007. News reports indicate that Jessica Hirth suffered emotional abuse during this marriage. This abuse involved making the individual feel disrespected or worthless through words or actions, using threats or intimidation to control or manipulate the individual, limiting their contact with the outside world to make them feel isolated and helpless, and exerting excessive control over their lives, including decisions about whom they can see, what they can do, and what they can wear. On the morning of May 24, 2010, the tranquility of Flint, Michigan, was shattered by the sound of a police call. Officers arrived on the scene to find the body of 31-year-old David Dwayne Motley in a residential yard. He had been repeatedly stabbed and was pronounced dead at the scene around 6 a.m. Just a week later, at around 2 a.m. on June 21, 2010, 59-year-old Emmanuel Mohammed met a tragic fate at the corner of Wood Street and B Avenue in Flint, where he was found dead. At this stage, police had not identified any suspects and had not suspected that these deaths were connected or the work of a serial killer. However, on July 4, 2010, a 20-year-old white male was attacked by an unidentified assailant in the 900 block of Vermillion Avenue in Flint. In the early morning of July 12th, a 29-year-old black man was attacked near Saginaw Road on Maple Avenue in Burton, a few miles east of Flint. A week later, on July 19th, in Genesee Township, northeast of Flint, 49-year-old white male Richard Buck was brutally attacked on North Saginaw Road and Julia Avenue at around 1:30 a.m. while on his way to a nearby store. According to news reports, Buck recounted that a man standing next to a green Chevrolet Blazer asked for his help in opening the vehicle's hood. As Buck was assisting, he was viciously attacked by the assailant, who wielded a Bowie knife, stabbing him in the kidneys and liver, and then strangling him. Buck described the attacker as a cold-blooded killer who knew exactly what he was doing. He was trained and knew where to stab to kill you, Buck said. Buck later told ABC News that his back and abdomen required 68 staples to close the wounds and that he had deep cuts on his arms from trying to protect his face from the attacker. "I have never been so injured in my life or been so close to death. I was about to die," Buck said. He strongly rejected the idea that the stabbing was racially motivated, believing instead that this guy was just a cold-blooded killer. On Friday, July 23, 2010, just 4 days after the previous stabbing incident, another victim was attacked. This time, the victim was a 21-year-old black man who was assaulted by the assailant at 5:45 a.m. in the 100 block of University Avenue in Flint. 3 days later, on Monday, July 26, 43-year-old Darwin Marshall was stabbed at 1:25 a.m. in the 800 block of Garland Street near West 5th Avenue in Flint. Unfortunately, he died shortly after being discovered. Darwin Marshall lived in an apartment in the north with his mother and another relative. He enjoyed singing with the congregation at the Ruth Street Church of God, which was founded by his grandfather. His mother, Velma Marshall, mournfully said, "It was a melody, and if he sang something for you, he would get your attention. He had a beautiful angelic voice. He was wonderful. I say this not just because I'm his mother, but because he was a wonderful person, and many people loved him." After the July 26 attack, the serial killer seemed to go into a frenzy, initiating almost daily attacks. The following day, July 27th, 26-year-old Antwain Marshall was stabbed at 3 a.m. on Pearson Street near Fleming Road in Flint. He described a terrifying experience similar to Richard Buck's, with similar wounds and 6 stab wounds to his abdomen and chest. He recalled that he was on his way into his apartment when a man approached him asking for help with a car. As he lifted the hood, the man took out a knife and stabbed him. On July 28th, a 19-year-old black man was stabbed at 3:30 a.m. on Cook Street, also in Flint. On July 29th, a 59-year-old black man was attacked at 6 a.m. at Saginaw Road and 12th Street. On Friday, July 30th, 2010, the serial killer attacked 2 victims on the same day, one in Flint and the other in a nearby town. The first victim was 60-year-old Frank Kellybrew, who had been laid off by General Motors and was staying at a local motel. Kellybrew's body was discovered by a passerby in front of the Italian Garden restaurant, located on Miller Road near Lennon Road, not far from the motel. Recent groceries were found near his body, and police estimated that the attack occurred around 3:30 a.m. Motel manager John Henson recalled seeing Kellybrew walk across Interstate 75 to a convenience store to buy some items. Henson said, "He was a good person. He kept to himself. If he didn't know you, he would avoid you and wouldn't bother you. He liked to sit on a bench near the Italian Garden in the evenings just to relax, and he made no noise when the stores closed." According to Henson, Kellybrew had been staying at the motel every month since September 2009. Homicide investigators determined that the last sighting of Kellybrew was walking west on Miller Road near Interstate 75. The second victim of July 30th was not identified, but was described as a 28-year-old black man who was attacked around 6 a.m. at an undisclosed location. On the morning of August 1st, 2010, 2 new attacks occurred. At 2:30 a.m., 17-year-old Edwin Wilson was assaulted, and a 25-year-old black man was stabbed at 6:15 a.m. in the 300 block of Bradley Avenue. Injured and hospitalized, Edwin Wilson complained that it took several days for the police to visit him in the hospital and ask about the attack. He said, "I wondered why Flint police didn't come and ask me anything that night." Police responded that their policy is not to speak with victims immediately after surgery. There were no further stabbing incidents in the following 2 days. On August 3rd, 2010, 49-year-old Arnold Miner was found murdered less than a mile from his home. He was killed during an attack while walking home after visiting his mother's house on the north side of Flint. Arnold Miner was the second member of his family to be murdered. His sister had been killed 26 years earlier, and her killer had never been caught. Arnold Miner's relative, Kareem Miner, said, "We cannot lose another family member to an unsolved mystery." In response to Kareem Miner's statement at a press conference attended by Flint Mayor Dane Walling, Police Chief Alvern Locke, and Genesee County Prosecutor David Layton, Walling said, "We will catch this person." Despite the ongoing investigation into each attack in Flint, it wasn't until after Miner's death, approximately 2 months into the attacks, that police realized the violence throughout the summer was more than just a coincidence. Many surviving victims provided similar descriptions of the assailant: a white male, between 5 feet 11 inches and 6 feet 2 inches tall, weighing 180 to 210 pounds, with light-colored hair, a goatee, and a muscular build. Some witnesses reported that the suspect drove a dark green Chevrolet Blazer with brown trim, a model year between 1995 and 2004. Given that most victims were African American, the NAACP expressed concern over the handling of the case and was particularly shocked that the attacks were not made public until August 3rd, 2010. The Flint branch president asked a reporter, "Why didn't we know about this? We didn't know there was someone out there stabbing black people. If this were happening in another community, they would be warned." Some Flint victims stated that they would have been more cautious if they had known a serial killer was among them. Police responded by explaining that, apart from unrelated street violence in Flint, there were few leads early on, and Flint was struggling with unemployment and economic difficulties. Despite the vigilance of Flint's police and citizens, a similar attack occurred in Leesburg, Virginia, a small town near Washington, D.C., about 600 miles southeast of Flint. The first victim was 15-year-old Anthony Cage Jr., who was out for a run near his home around 9:30 p.m. on August 4th, 2010. A driver of a passing vehicle got out, approached the unsuspecting teenager, and stabbed him. Cage's mother, Virginia Scott Bay Cage, reported that after feeling pain, her son turned around to see the attacker running back to his car. Doctors found that Cage's liver and kidneys had been pierced, but fortunately, he survived after a 3-hour surgery. The next day, a man driving a green Chevrolet Blazer was stopped near Arlington for a traffic violation and briefly detained due to an outstanding warrant. When his vehicle was impounded, police found a knife and a hammer inside. The man was identified as 33-year-old Elias Abuelazam, a legal resident from Israel. After being released on bail, Abuelazam's vehicle was returned to him. At this point, Virginia police had no idea that Abuelazam was the perpetrator behind the attacks from the past few months. That evening, after Abuelazam was released by the police, a 67-year-old man was stabbed outside his apartment. Despite losing a kidney, the man survived. The next day, August 6, 2010, a 19-year-old man was struck in the head with a hammer by a stranger who had asked him for help. The young man managed to escape before the attacker could hit him again, possibly due to the relatively minor nature of his injuries. Among the 3 victims in Leesburg, 2 were black and 1 was a Hispanic teenager. Each victim was able to provide similar descriptions of the attacker and his vehicle, matching those provided by Flint police. As the police began to piece together the information, Abuelazam was included on their list of suspects. On August 7, 2010, 59-year-old church custodian Tony Leno was stabbed around 7:45 p.m. Leno later told police that a tall, muscular white man stopped his car near him and asked for directions before attacking him with a knife. Leno was stabbed twice in the abdomen before he could react. Fortunately, he survived, but the attacker fled the scene. On August 11, 2010, investigators visited a party store named Goldwater Market near Flint, Michigan, where Abuelazam was employed. He had been working there since July 5, 2010, and was hired by the store owner, Abdullah Farah. Due to his tall stature, he was known in the store as Big Guy, and others referred to him as Eli. Abuelazam, who stood 6 feet 4 inches tall and weighed around 230 pounds, drove a green SUV similar to the one described in many of the attacks. Reports indicate that Abuelazam told Farah he needed to take leave to go to Virginia. Investigators noted that the attacks in Leesburg began shortly after Abuelazam left the party store. From a store customer, Edward Gaines, investigators learned that Abuelazam showed Gaines injuries on his hands and claimed they were from a fight. An African-American colleague, Corky Caldwell, told investigators that he did not sense any racial hostility from Abuelazam. Caldwell stated, "If he were the killer, he would have killed me." But there was no sign of violence in him. He couldn't be a racist because all the black people come here at night. I never saw any sign of madness in him. Less than 24 hours after receiving information about Abuelazam working at the party store, investigators worked through the night and spoke with his relatives, discovering that Abuelazam was at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. On the evening of Wednesday, August 11, 2010, they located him at the airport. Abuelazam was waiting at the gate for a flight to Tel Aviv, Israel. U.S. Customs and Border Protection officials, assisted by investigators, used the airport's intercom system to call Abuelazam to the ticket counter. Upon reporting to the counter, Abuelazam was arrested by Border Patrol agents. He was charged with attempted murder in the attack on Antwain Marshall and was held in Fulton County Jail awaiting extradition hearings. When FBI agents arrived at Marshall's home at 3 a.m. that day, Marshall identified Abuelazam from a photo as the man who had attacked him. Based on Marshall's identification, investigators were authorized to detain Abuelazam. The Michigan State Police also seized Abuelazam's green Chevrolet Blazer, planning to process it for possible evidence. Abuelazam was also investigated for an alleged stabbing incident in Israel in 2010. Reports indicated that he had stabbed a friend during an argument. However, the case was dropped when Abuelazam's friend refused to press charges. On August 13, 2010, Abuelazam waived his right to contest extradition to Michigan. He flew to Flint on August 26, 2010, and was detained in Genesee County Jail. According to Genesee County Sheriff Robert Pickell, Abuelazam was kept in solitary confinement, possibly for his safety and due to the nature of his crimes, which had taken many lives. At a preliminary hearing for the Arnold Minor murder case, the judge ruled that evidence from other Genesee County attacks could be used in the trial. The trial began on May 8, 2012, with key evidence from the prosecution being a pair of pants from Abuelazam's luggage that had a drop of Minor's blood. On May 15th, the prosecution called 50 witnesses, including other victims and their relatives, several forensic experts, and Abuelazam's uncle. 2 days later, on May 17, Abuelazam's defense introduced evidence of his mental illness. Their sole expert witness was a psychiatrist hired by the defense, who diagnosed Abuelazam with paranoid schizophrenia. The prosecution countered by challenging the psychiatrist's credibility, noting that his expertise was in addiction medicine. The following day, the prosecution presented 2 mental health experts who disputed the psychiatrist's diagnosis. Both psychologists testified that, despite Abuelazam's personality disorder, he lacked empathy, and his attacks were planned and organized, making him legally sane. On May 22, 2012, after an hour of deliberation, the jury convicted Abuelazam of serial murder and serial assault. On June 25, 2012, he was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. The series of tragic events came to an end with justice being served, but the lives of the innocent victims could not be reclaimed. Their loss remains a deep, enduring pain for their families and the community.